In a world ruled by pride and fragile egos, there is one wound that cuts deeper than any blade: disrespect. You have felt it: the mocking tone, the dismissive gesture, the attempt to make you small. Most answer it with rage, others with desperate defense. Both are weak. Today, I will show you the darkest way to handle disrespect, a path where silence, calculation, and ruthless control bend the offender beneath your will. This is not about forgiveness. This is about power. Disrespect is not an injury, it is an opportunity. While others waste their strength in loud quarrels, you shall remain silent, patient, and merciless. In the game of power, the darkest response is not anger, but mastery. Remember, he who knows how to bend perception, control patience, and strike unseen is never disrespected twice. There is a moment every man and woman faces in life: the sting of disrespect. A word thrown carelessly, a smirk that cuts like a knife, a dismissal meant to remind you of your supposed smallness. In that instant, blood rises, your heart pounds, and your pride screams for retaliation. The common man takes the bait. He shouts, he throws his fury into the air, hoping his voice will restore his dignity. Listen carefully. Those who erupt in rage lose the battle before it even begins. They confirm the insult, they expose their weakness. They give the offender exactly what he desired: proof of his power over you. The wise path, the darker path, is not to fight fire with fire, but to extinguish it with silence. Silence is not absence. Silence is presence. It is the invisible dagger that presses against the throat of the offender without ever drawing blood. When you say nothing, you force them into a prison of uncertainty. They wonder, did you not hear them? Did you dismiss them? Are you plotting a response they cannot see? Silence drives them mad with possibilities. It is a torment far greater than any insult you could hurl back. Machiavelli himself understood this truth. In the courts of Florence, words were weapons, but silence was the shield that turned daggers into dust. To remain silent in the face of insult was not weakness, but power, because silence denies your enemy the most precious prize, acknowledgement. When you do not respond, you deny them existence in your world. Their attempt to wound you collapses into a void, and they are left wrestling with their own shadow. Think of the offender's psychology. Why do they insult? To provoke, to test, to feed their hunger for dominance. They want you to react, to confirm that their strike landed. But when you remain still, calm, and unmoved, you reverse the game. The stage is theirs, but the spotlight suddenly grows too hot. Their laughter feels hollow, their pride falters, because the silence you wield becomes a mirror. In that mirror, they see not your weakness, but their own desperate need for your reaction. Imagine this: someone mocks you in public. All eyes turn, waiting for your explosion. They expect rage. They expect protest. Instead, you offer nothing. No defense, no reply. You simply hold your posture, your gaze steady, your silence louder than any scream. The crowd begins to shift. At first, they laugh with your insulter. But as the seconds stretch, the laughter dies. Now the mocker seems desperate, even foolish, repeating himself, trying harder to force a reaction from you. You, unmoved, remain untouchable. The power has shifted. The silence has spoken, and its voice is absolute. This is why silence is sharper than any blade. A blade wounds the body. Silence wounds the mind. It leaves the offender replaying the moment again and again, questioning themselves. Did they look weak? Did they misstep? Why did you not answer? They cannot escape the thought that perhaps you are stronger, more cunning, that perhaps you have chosen not to waste your wrath now, but are saving it for a strike that will come later. Understand, this silence is not passive. It is a deliberate act of dominance. It is strategy. It is psychological warfare. The one who holds his tongue is not the one without words, but the one who holds control. By saying nothing, you say everything. You declare that you are above the insult, that their words are beneath the weight of your attention. This is how kings carry themselves. This is how rulers stand unshaken before whispers and jeers. Do not misunderstand. Silence does not mean surrender. It is not the retreat of the timid. It is the poise of the predator. The lion does not roar when the hyena mocks. The lion waits. The silence is the warning, the aura of inevitability. Those who laugh at him in that silence soon learn that laughter does not protect them when the strike comes. The insult fades, but the silence remains carved into memory. Think about your own life. How many times have you reacted, only to regret it? How many times has your anger made you smaller, not greater? Every time you raise your voice in haste, you hand the enemy your dignity on a silver platter. But the moment you embrace silence, you steal their power back. You force them to live with the unbearable thought that they failed to touch you, that their effort was wasted, that their disrespect was powerless. This is why silence is feared, not because it hides weakness, but because it hides strength. No one knows how deep your silence runs. No one knows what you are thinking, what you are planning, what you are withholding. In silence, you become unfathomable and therefore untouchable. Disrespect burns hottest in the moment it is delivered. It is a spark that strikes the nerves, making your pride ache for immediate retaliation. But this is where most fall into the trap. They lash out, blinded by emotion, and in doing so, reveal themselves as predictable, weak, and desperate. The insult was not the true weapon. The true weapon was the offender's ability to control your reaction. And when you react in haste, you confirm their power over you. But you are not here to be common. You are here to master the darker way. And that path begins with patience. Not the soft patience of resignation, but the sharp patience of calculation. It is the patience of the spider, who does not leap at every movement, waits until the prey is caught inescapably in the web. This kind of patience turns disrespect into opportunity. It transforms a single insult into a seed, one you will allow to grow until the moment is ripe for harvest. Consider how power works. Pride is not static. It rises and falls like the tides. When your enemy feels strong, when arrogance swells in their chest, that is when they expose themselves the most. If you strike back immediately after being disrespected, you are striking when they are already armored by their momentum. They expect your anger. They are ready for it. But if you restrain yourself, if you say nothing, if you do nothing, you begin to haunt them. Days pass, then weeks, and they start to believe you have forgotten. They grow careless. Their guard drops. And in that moment, when they are basking in their illusion of victory, that is when your retaliation carries the most weight. Strategic patience is the art of letting time sharpen your revenge. Imagine a rival humiliates you in front of others. The impulse is to respond in that same instant, to reclaim your honor publicly. But if you wait, if you observe, soon you will find their weakness. Perhaps it is the loyalty of their allies. Perhaps it is the trust of their superiors. Perhaps it is their reputation so fragile beneath the mask of confidence. When you wait, you discover where they are vulnerable. And when you strike at that vulnerability, your revenge does not merely silence them, it cripples them. History remembers those who understood this. Princes, rulers, and generals who did not fight on the enemy's terms, but on their own. Machiavelli himself advised that one must appear calm even in insult, because the man who waits controls not just the action but the stage upon which the action unfolds. The impatient man is a pawn, the patient man is a king who moves only when it benefits him. Patience is also a form of punishment. The offender expects the satisfaction of your outrage. They want to taste your anger, to see your blood rise. But when you withhold it, when you give them nothing, they begin to rot under their own anticipation. They know they have provoked you, but they do not know when or how you will answer. That uncertainty gnaws at them. It poisons their thoughts. It steals their sleep. And so, without lifting a finger, you torment them far more effectively than if you had exploded in rage. Think of the chessboard. The novice attacks with haste, eager to seize every piece they can. But the master waits, baiting his opponent, allowing them to overreach, to overextend, to trap themselves. Then, when the moment arrives, the master makes one decisive move that shatters the entire position. This is how you must treat disrespect. Not as a spark demanding instant flame, but as a chance to maneuver, to wait until the other has stepped too far into danger to escape. Patience is not weakness. It is strength disguised. It is the art of restraint that keeps your enemy guessing. It is the decision to fight not in their chosen arena, but in yours. And when you finally unleash what you have prepared, it will not be a reaction born of anger. It will be a strike born of design, one that cannot be undone. Retaliation is an art, not an instinct. When wronged, the common impulse is to strike back where the wound was dealt, to match insult with insult, to attempt to balance the ledger with heat and haste. That is the theater of the inexperienced, the noisy revenge of those who lack imagination. The darker, truer path is subtler. Do not attack the surface, strike at the root. Calculated retaliation is not about proving you can be as cruel as your offender. It is about dismantling the pillars that supported their cruelty until they have nothing left to stand upon. Begin with diagnosis. Every act of disrespect is a symptom, not the disease. Who stands behind the offender? Which alliances prop them up? Where do they draw their confidence? Money, influence, reputation, loyalty. To retaliate without knowledge is to swing blindly and risk wounding yourself. The master studies. He maps the network of dependency and pride that fuels the insult, and then he identifies the single lever whose movement will send the whole structure tumbling. Then plan. Retaliation must be surgical. It must pierce the source, not spray the room with angry shrapnel. If the offender thrives in public praise, expose their private incompetence. If they rely on alliances, quietly erode those bonds until they stand alone. If their power depends on perception, Alter that perception with quiet, irresistible truth. The goal is not to humiliate them once and move on. The objective is to render their platform impotent so that future insults carry no weight. When the foundation is gone, their words become mere echoes in an empty hall. Economy of force is essential. The most devastating strikes are those that demand the least expenditure from you. There is elegance in a retaliation that costs little but destroys much. Use leverage, a whispered fact at the right table, a patient revelation to a trusted authority, an action that appears accidental, but is in truth a consequence of careful design. Let others pull the rope while you remain unseen, letting the offender hang himself with the very threads he once used to bind others. Contain emotional exposure. Rage is an expensive currency. Spend it rarely. The person who retaliates with cold calculation denies the offender the satisfaction of a reciprocal wound. When your opponent expects fury and receives instead a composed, methodical response, panic replaces triumph. They begin to fear not only your action but your restraint, for restraint implies reserves, reserves imply resources, and resources mean a threat that can be renewed at any time. Remember timing. A strike delivered too soon will be parried. Too late and the opportunity is lost. The patient man watches for the moment when the offender is most vulnerable, when they are celebrated and careless, when allies are distant, when their guard is down. Then, a precise move, the damage done is irreversible. Calculated retaliation is like chess played over months, the sacrifice of a pawn here, the coaxing of a rival there, all orchestrated until the final. Power is a story told to many, and whoever writes the story writes the truth. Disrespect is not only a spoken slight, it is an attempt to rewrite your chapter in the minds of others. The darkest mastery is not in crushing the offender alone, in seizing the narrative so that the world reads them as small and you as inevitable. Dominance by control of perception is the deliberate art of arranging appearances, whispers, and signals until public belief bows to your design. Perception is fragile because people rarely test reality. They accept the version that is most convenient to their fears and desires. You must learn to place the pieces so that convenience favors you. Begin by understanding the audiences who matter, allies whose support you cannot lose, skeptics whose doubt must be neutralized, and the indifferent masses whose attention you can coax. Each group listens for different tones, some for proof, some for spectacle, some for consistency. Tailor your signals accordingly, and you will bend their judgment without open conflict. Control is not noise, it is subtle architecture. A single well-timed compliment in the right ear, a quiet correction to a whispered rumor, a methodical reveal of evidence. Not to grandstand, but to seed doubt, can shift reputations more surely than any public denunciation. When you manage perception, you need not shout your superiority. You need only make the offender's weakness visible in a way that seems obvious, almost accidental. The crowd will supply its own condemnation. The more natural the fall appears, the less sympathy it will draw. Actors in power understand the power of consistency. If you are calm, dignified, and measured whenever slighted, people will eventually learn to read your silence as strength and the offender's noise as desperation. Repetition builds patterns in the mind. Patterns become assumptions. Assumptions harden into received truths. Thus, your behavior over time is a slow, quiet sculpting of public belief. When the offender tries to retake the stage, the audience has already made their verdict. Use symbols. Small, repeatable gestures that convey authority without explanation. Steady gaze at a critical moment, an invited skeptic turned ally, a withheld compliment at precisely the instant they seek validation. These micro moves multiply. They tell a story faster than arguments. Humans are story-driven creatures. When given a sequence of cues, they will complete the narrative themselves, often in the harshest terms for the one who offended. Leverage networks. Reputation travels on relationships, and those relationships are as much instruments as any blade. If you can quietly realign the perceptions of a few influential people, their view cascades outward. A whispered doubt from a respected figure, a casual mention of incompetence in the right circle, or a subtle withdrawal of access can transform the offender from insolent to impotent in the eyes of those whose opinions matter. The aim is not to lie but to curate truth. Present the facts, the context, and the cadence so that the conclusion you desire feels like a natural discovery. But be careful. Control of perception demands restraint. The moment manipulation becomes obvious, sympathy swings back to the accused. The greatest practitioners move so that their hand is never seen. They orchestrate outcomes that look spontaneous, as if the world decided on its own that the offender was unworthy. This is when domination is most complete, not when you have shouted victory, but when everyone else has decided you were always the rightful victor. Ultimately, dominance by perception turns respect into an ecosystem you manage rather than a trophy you seize. It makes the world read your strength into every silence and every slight, so that disrespect dissolves before it can form. When you master the narrative, when you control the light by which men and women are seen, you need not break your enemy. You must simply ensure they are seen breaking themselves. And then watch as the crowd completes the fall with their own unbidden conclusion. Disrespect is the test every soul must endure. The weak answer it with noise, the ordinary with anger, the desperate with desperate proof. But you now know a darker path, a path where silence carves deeper wounds than words, where patience makes your enemy rot in their own arrogance, where retaliation strikes not at the insult, but at the very pillars of power, and where perception itself becomes your kingdom to command. Darkest way to handle disrespect is not to fight on the surface, but to rule beneath it, unseen, inevitable, untouchable. For in the game of power, victory does not belong to the loud, nor to the quick, but to the one who waits, calculates, and bends reality until even enemies bow in silence.